Hello, my friends. All right, my friends. So this week we've been learning about hibernation and about winter clothes. And the next story I'm going to read you is actually one of my all-time favorite stories. Although it has a lot of words and it's quite long, it has a good meaning behind it. And it's called The Rag Coat. Look at how beautiful her coat is. A coat is the same as a jacket. In winter, Papa carried me to church in a burlap feed sack because I didn't have a coat. Mama, Papa, Clemmy, and me, we'd all hitch a ride on Jeremy Miller's hay wagon and huddle under Mama's big quilt. I know Papa loved that quilt because he said it had all the nice bright colors of the day in it, and the day was something he could hardly ever see. He worked down in the black coal mines and didn't come up till the sun was gone. I told Papa it was warmer under that quilt than if I had a coat. He always laughed when I said that and told me, Mina, you got the right way of thinking. People only need people and nothing else. Don't you forever forget that. Papa got sick with the miner's cough and couldn't work much, so Mama stitched day and night on her quilts to try to make some money. When I was old enough to start school, I couldn't go. They needed me at home to help Mama. I could card all her quilt stuffing and keep Clemmy's dirty fingers out of all that cotton. I made a doll for myself by stitching up some of Mama's quilt scraps and stuffing cotton inside. I talked to her like she was my friend because I didn't have any friends. Mama was too busy for much talk, and when Papa was home, he mostly just stared out of the window. This is a book about being grateful for what you have. The summer I was 8, Papa called me over to his rocking chair. I climbed up on his lap and he said, "You're getting big, Mina." "Too big for laps?" I asked. "Not too big for mine," he said softly, "but too big to still be at home. It's nearly time for you to go to school." I could hardly hold back my smile, just thinking about all the friends I would have. But I didn't want to leave Mama without a helper. "Papa," I said, "I can't go to school. Mama needs my help." Papa just looked at me really steady and said, "They have books at school, Mina. You can learn things from these books that you can't learn at home." "But I don't have a coat, Papa," I quietly reminded him. "Mina," he said, "don't you worry about a coat. I'll think of something." But he never got the chance because Papa died that summer. Everyone came at once and brought us food. I couldn't figure out how so many people could squeeze into our little cabin, but somehow they managed it. They all said they knew my Papa very well. I sat on a stool back by the wood stove with Clemmy on my lap so no one would step on us. I couldn't stand it. They all wore black, black like the coal mines that killed my Papa. He didn't even like black. He liked all the bright colors of the day. So why were they all wearing black, I wondered. School started in September. Mama said I could go, but I decided not to. I still didn't have a coat to wear, and I knew it was no use starting something I'd have to quit when the winter came. Other mothers who had children in school came over to quilt with Mama. I called them the Quilting Mothers. That fall, they were all working on patterns called Joseph's Quilt of many colors. I looked at it and said, "That Joseph sure was lucky to have a coat like that. I wish I had one." "Why do you say that, Mina?" Miss Miller asked. "Because then I could go to school," I said, a little embarrassed that I had mentioned it. Well now, Mina, said Miss Miller, I don't know that any of us have a spare coat we could hand down to you, but I'm sure we can come up with scraps to spare. We could piece them together and you'd have a coat like Joseph's after all. Miss Miller looked around the room and the other mothers nodded. Mama quickly protested. You all need those rags for your own quilts. Don't go giving us things you need yourself. They paid no attention to Mama, Miss Hunter said, and we could use feed bags for the inside of the coat. My eyes filled with tears, but I was a little embarrassed. I said, I have a feed sack Papa used to carry me in. I ran and fetched it. Will this do? Yes, it will do fine, they told me. Then I thought of something important. But you need to make quilts to sell. You can't take out time to make my coat. First things first, said Miss Miller, and they all repeated it. Mama smiled and shook her head and tears in her eyes. Isn't that so kind of all the moms to come together to help the little girl? A long time ago, people didn't have a lot of money and you couldn't go to stores to get your clothes. You couldn't go to stores to get your food. So that's why this is a story about being grateful for what you have. The very next day I went to school, running most of the way to keep warm and thinking all the while of the coat I would soon have. The schoolhouse was just one big room filled with 14 children. I had seen most of them at church, but never got the chance to talk to them. I knew I would love school, even though I was put in the front row with the youngest ones, and Clyde whispered that it was because I was dumb. Then Shane Hunter pulled my braid, and Scouch Miller said I asked the teacher too many questions. But our teacher, Miss Campbell, smiled at me and said, smart people are those who have a lot of questions. My most favorite thing about school was sharing day. Each of us had our own day when we shared something special with the class. Clyde brought in the watch his grandpa gave him. It was still ticking, and he made sure we all heard it. On her day, Lottie showed us the porcelain doll her aunt gave her from New York. We all thought it was the most beautiful thing ever and wanted to touch it, but Lottie wouldn't let us. She said, nope, it's mine, which made everybody mad. I knew just what I would show when it was my sharing day, but I kept it a secret. I knew the quilting mothers would keep it a secret too. Each day I hurried home to see my coat. It was looking like the colors of the fall days, the yellow gold of the birch leaves, the silvery grays and purples of the sky, the deep greens and browns of the pines, and the rusty reds of the chimney bricks. All the colors Papa would have chosen. I decided to put a piece of his artwork in the jacket. It seemed just right. The mothers worked as quickly as they could, but the cold weather was quicker. At recess, Scotchy asked me why I didn't have a coat. I told her I couldn't jump rope if I had one on. Jumping a lot kept me warm. I was fast becoming the best jump roper in school. Not last night, but the night before, 24 robbers came knocking at my door as I jumped rope. That was my favorite tune. One night when Mama looks sad, I told her things could be worse. We could have 24 robbers knocking at our door. She said, now what on earth would they want with us, Mina? Oh, Mina, they would want the coat first thing, I said. She laughed then, but I was mostly serious. Finally, my coat was all done. It was so beautiful, and the quilting mothers had finished it right in time for my sharing day. The morning I walked to school looking down at all the different colored pieces of my cloth in my coat. All the stories and quilting mothers had told me about the rags and who they belonged to. I knew by heart. I had ended up choosing the most worn pieces for my coat because the best stories went with them. I was still looking down and repeating each story to myself when I bumped into Clyde outside the schoolyard. "Hey, rag coat," he said, and all the others laughed. Before I knew it, they all were dancing around me and laughing. "Rag coat, rag coat." Lottie said, "Look, it's even dirty with soot." And she poked her finger into my papa's cloth. Then they all said, "Hey, Mina, you were better off with no coat than with that old raggedy thing." "Maybe you're right," I yelled. "If I had no coat, then I would have never have come to school." I broke through their circle and ran home far, far into the woods. Aw, poor Mina. Is that very kind of them to make fun of her? I found an old log and sat on it for a long time, too angry to cry. I just stared across the fields Papa used to gaze at. "Oh, Papa, I wish you were here," I said, and then I couldn't help but cry. I cried for Papa and I cried for the quilting mothers who had wasted their time. I was crying so hard I rocked that old log. Then all at once I stopped because I felt something warm and familiar. The feed bag inside my coat made me feel like Papa's arms were around me once again. I could almost hear him say, "Mina, people only need people and nothing else, and don't you forget that." I jumped off the log, wiped my tears from my cheek, and brushed the leaves off my coat. "I won't forget it, Papa," she said, and I headed back to school. I think her jacket is beautiful. When I walked into the school room, Miss Campbell looked up surprised. "Why, Mina," she said, "I was told you ran home sick." Scotchy jumped up, her face all red. "That's not true, Miss Campbell," she blurted out. "We lied to you. Mina left because we were making fun of her old coat." "I'll tell her, Scotchy," I said. "It's not an old coat. It's a new coat." "But it's just a bunch of old rags," said Lottie. "It is not a bunch of old rags," I said. "My coat is full of stories about everybody here." They all looked at me puzzled. "Don't you see? These are all your rags." They still seemed puzzled, so I showed them. "Look, Shane, here is that blanket of yours that your mama's sister gave her for the night you were born. The midwife said you wouldn't live but 3 days because you were so small. But your mama wrapped you up tight in this blanket and put you in a little box by the wood stove, and your papa kept the fire going all night for 3 weeks. Of course you lived all right," I said, looking up at Shane. Shane was big. "And you hung on to that blanket for years until it was nothing but shreds." "My blanket," he whispered. "I thought I'd never see it again." He looked at his old rag like he wanted to touch it. Then the others began discovering their old favorite things and crowded around me. They each wanted their story, and I reminded every one of them. I even showed the piece of wool jacket Saucy had left her calf wear when it was sick. Lottie's rag was a faded piece from the fancy dress her aunt from New York sent her for her 7th birthday. And Clyde had a scrap from the pants that he had worn when he went fishing with his grandpa. Saucy said, "Mina, I sure am sorry we ever said anything bad about your coat." "Me too," I heard the others murmur. "I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to let us touch it," Lottie said. "I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to be all of our friends," said Clyde. "Friends share," I said, and I let them each touch their rag. Then I showed them the feed bag inside my coat and told them how it made me feel like my papa's arms wrapped around me. Shane put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Mina, I bet you got the warmest coat in school." "Well, it took a whole lot of people to make it warm," I told them, and we all laughed. The end. Look at her beautiful, beautiful jacket. All right, my friends, so the whole point of reading this, besides in the wintertime we need to have a coat, is that you need to be grateful for what you have. There are many, many, many children out there that do not have what you have. They don't have the toys or the clothes or the food. So please be grateful for everything you have and make sure to say your thank yous. We'll see you later. Bye.